Friends, just this past August, you and I were up in Denver driving the all-new Volvo XC60 T8 plug-in hybrid. And while we were there, Volvo was kind enough to bring a couple of special cars. First off, there was that stunning V90 R design, the blue one with the 21-inch wheels. Still want that car. And then they brought an S90. Now, it wasn't your ordinary run-of-the-mill S90. It was an S90 that finally has the same T8 twin-engine plug-in hybrid system as the XC90 and now this XC60. So I wanted to shoot it, but just didn't have the time to get to it and give it the time it was due. But now, it followed me home, so let's take a look at a Volvo that can be rear drive, at least when you plug it into a wall. So at the top of this tech review, let's start with the stuff that you and I already know. You can say it with me. 2-liter, 4-cylinder, direct ejected, turbocharged, and supercharged gasoline engine. In a normal internal combustion T6 S90, this is good for 316 horsepower at 5,700 RPM. In a T8, it's 313 horsepower, also at 5,700 RPM. The torque the same, 295 pounds, anywhere between 2,200 RPM and 5,400 RPM. Now, this is the T8, which means it has 2 electric motors. There's a starter generator up front. That really focuses on charging the battery and adding assist when the car is under load. Think stop and go traffic. The one we need to focus on is the electric motor at the rear. That's good for 87 horsepower and 177 pounds of torque, which obviously starts at 0. This gets to all 4 wheels through an 8-speed automatic transmission, same deal we've seen in every other Volvo. Now, one thing to note here, this T8, and like any other T8, there is no drive shaft connecting all of this. It's kind of, they sync it with computers and wizardry from guys that program it by the name of Stefan. Now we need to turn our attention onto the stuff that impacts the way the car drives. Let's start with the suspension. Up front, there's a double wishbone suspension with stabilizer bars. In the rear, there are 2 different flavors on offer. In a basic S90, this is a transverse composite leaf spring. And then in Inscription or fancy S90s, there's this flavor, and it's an air ride setup. Now, something that's important to note, because we've looked at a lot of different Volvos now. In an S90 and a V90, so the sedan and the wagon, the air ride is only changing the rear suspension, so that means the wishbones stay up front. In an XC90 or an XC60, basically the crossovers, all 4 corners move to air ride. Got it? What has it been, 20 episodes? Probably more, where you and I have sat in the front seat of every Geely-era Volvo, and we have ogled over the stunning interior design. Well, newsflash, nothing has changed here. Actually, one thing, but it has more of an impact on driving dynamics than it does the fancy interior. And you're looking at it. It's an additional 5 extra inches of length. So wheelbase goes from 115.8 to 120.5, and then the length, it goes from 195.4 all the way up to 200.1. So now this is a very large car. You're looking at this and you're probably thinking it doesn't look very comfortable. Well, that's because I can now control this seat, so I can push this farther forward, so I can get this person out of my way. I can even move this seat back forward as well, so I can make this into basically a Swedish limousine. And then if that wasn't enough, I can control the sunshade. So if the sun gets too much from the unwashed masses, I can control that as well. And while we're up there, it's got this like fancy, it's not suede, they call it a nubuck. It's part of one of the packages, so that's optional even in the Inscription, but really adds to it, especially with the stitching on these leather-covered grab handles. And then, if that weren't enough, the outboard seats, both heated as well as cooled. You can control the HVAC system from here. Then over here, USB as well as a SIG plug adapter here. And then, let's make sure this cup holder's closed. Armrest here, but let's say for the sake of discussion, you want to somehow pitch to your better half that this is a practical vehicle, not something you're going to drive around like a king in. You can put this back and make this a true Volvo, a practical 5-seat vehicle. Now there's two more important things we've got to focus on. This is yet another Volvo built off of that scalable product architecture we talked about in the first XC90 episode 2.5 years ago. And the concept is very simple. It's like interlocking tools that make up whole cars. So the stuff that you don't see, they are either shared or common amongst cars that are disparate, like an XC60 or in this case an S90. Meaning that electric motor that sits in the back, the 4-cylinder engine and the starter generator motor sits in the front, and the batteries that sit in the center of the vehicle, those are all common, even though this is a much larger vehicle than an XC60. Now, if we're really being honest about this approach to building cars, it's great that you can take very fancy technology from a rather expensive car like this and bring it down to a mid-size crossover like the XC60, but really the benefit is more for amortizing costs over multiple cars for the car manufacturer. And then last but not least, there's the weight. That T6 that we drove in Spain, 4,222 pounds. This fitted with 2 propulsion systems and a lot of batteries, 4,740 pounds. Okay, so let's do a bit of math here. You and I have looked at the S90 before. Nothing new there. You and I have driven multiple Volvos with electrification. Also, nothing new there. But you and I have never driven a long wheelbase Volvo, an extra 5 inches here, and you and I have never put all of this together in the same package. Or actually, while we're at it, you and I have never driven an electrified sedan Volvo. So there is indeed a lot new here, to the point where you and I are going to have to put that in a full first drive review. But because there's so many changes, we're mixing in this like soup or potpourri, we're going to have to put a theme to it, and the theme is going to be Uptown, if you couldn't tell by the surroundings I'm in now. And in the interim, I'm going to leave you with a question. The question is this. Now that Volvo has added electrification into a luxury sedan, do you feel it is now more competitive than the previous internal combustion engine S90 offering that was from, what, 2016 to 2017? Don't just tell me yes or no. Why or why not? And what do you feel it is now most competitive against? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to say, until I see you next time, bis später.